Hi, I'm Paul. This is Dave. Welcome to another episode of Cask Talk, where we're happy to talk about anything that comes in a cask. Dave here is a brewer and a certified beer judge. I am just a beer drinker and enthusiast. And today we are here to talk about IPAs, and specifically my favorite IPA. I don't think Dave cares as much for it on one level or another. It is called Hop Knot, and this is also by the Four Peaks Brewing Company. And I've drinking way too much of it, but I'm here to bring my favorite to you.
I am not a tremendous IPA fan, and it's not that I don't like them. It's just that they're everywhere. Every bar has one. Every store has like 12,000 versions of them. And it's a pretty versatile style generally. Just look for more malt-centric or yeast-centric beers when I want to spend time drinking them. I enjoy IPAs. It's just not one that I go chasing down.
I personally love a good IPA, and I cannot finish an IPA I don't like. So there is a very wide variety as far as the way they're going to hit the individual.
One of the interesting things about an IPA that makes an IPA, the fact that it is a hop-centered beer. Because it's a hop-centered beer, you look at every variety of IPA can be different purely based upon the hops that they're putting in there. The flavor, the aroma, they can be very unique. They can vary anywhere from like citrus, piney, grassy notes in them.
Some of them just taste like you're drinking liquid flower oil.
Yeah, perfumey and grapefruit. You can find huge variety. So, from a marketing aspect, I totally understand this because I can take generally a pretty basic beer, change what hops it is, put a different label on it, and put it out there in the market. I completely understand it. I can understand why people like it because, hey, you know what? We do like variety.
Yeah, I will say I have a friend that she will drink pretty much whatever. When her only option is an IPA, she'll drink one. Believe me, you'll hear about how awful it is the entire time. And I have other friends that have had like this IPA or other IPAs, and they're like, oh, that is like the best thing in my mouth. It's like drinking grape soda when you haven't had one for 5 years. It's a very polarizing, I guess, kind of beer in a lot of ways, which I understand because, like I said, I've had IPAs that were just flat out disgusting. I won't drink them. And I've had other beers where I was like this one, where, I have to be careful about having too much of it sitting around my house because I'll drink them all.
Yeah, so it's an interesting beer. You might see when you hear the term dry hopped is typically referring to an IPA, sometimes a pale ale. This is a process where they may be just taking hops at the end of their boil and tossing them in there, hoping that they're not going to be adding bitterness to it, but they're adding flavor and aroma from them as they soak, as they're finishing up their boils. There's also processes where what they call hop backs, you might actually pump the beer as you're cooling it through a container that's just loaded with hops, imparting some of this character to it to kind of finish it up. And because of that, you're going to find sometimes very hazy beers, very cloudy beers.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of beers that I've seen that are labeled hazy IPAs.
Yep.
And if you drink them, they're hazy. When you look at it, it's very clearly not a clear beer. It's cloudy.
This beer will tend to be a little bit drier, moderately carbonated to highly carbonated, not overly sweet.
No, it's
leaning more towards the bitter side. So when you're looking for the balance of a beer, they're really leaning it towards this bitter side, but that's where they're creating a lot of this hop character that's in it.
And if you get bored and you want to look up IPAs, Wikipedia has a whole lot of stuff on it. Basically, it stands for India Pale Ale. They were importing beer from England to India, and they needed a recipe that could withstand the trip and various temperature changes as they sailed around. And this is back in the early 1800s. So the beer style has been around quite a bit longer than a lot of the other common beer styles you might find.
I'm sure what probably happened is as these beers arrived in India, soldiers and people from England who were demanding beers to drink were receiving something that probably reminded them of the beers that they drank originally, but because they had chosen to put more hops in it, was different. There's a good chance that they sent back that message back to England, hey, it's different, but we like it. Yeah. So if you're a brewer and you say, hey, we like this more hoppiness to it, and you did it purely just for preservative aspect of it, hey, you know what, let's go all in with that. What you end up with is a style today that is far hoppier than previous styles of beers. The interesting aspect of this is the American IPA. So this is a little bit different than the original English or India Pale Ale. What the American aspect is it's made with American hops. Many of these hop styles, obviously genetically different, but then grown here in American conditions, many of them in like Oregon and Washington are big hop areas. What they create is a unique character of hops. These are different than a lot of the noble hops that you might find back in England or back in Germany. So these hops have more pronounced citrus and orangey and grapefruity flavors that you don't find as strong when you go look at your English counterparts too.
My first beer that was noticeably hoppy was Sam Adams Boston Lager. I got to where I really liked the bite and the bitterness from the hops. This basically is just the same thing on steroids. It's one of those, if you enjoy that flavor, it's something you'll seek out kind of things.
I really like the Sam Adams hops. I believe it is a middle fruit hop. They almost own like 90% of the production of that hop. I love using it in many different kinds of beers, and it's generally hard to get a hold of.
Yeah, it's one of those things like once you develop a certain taste or a certain palate for it, you're going to go to it, and that's why IPAs are popular, because there's a lot of that love and that palate and what have you. It's like my friend who she'll drink my beer and she'll let me know she hates it, but to her it's like drinking liquid perfume and flowers. It's just way too much for her. Whereas to me, this is teetering right on that edge where it's super strong. It's not over the edge where it's too floral, where we've lost the bite.
Let's open them up and take a look at them. Not going to use your lighter.
Nah, maybe I'll use a pair of pliers next time.
As you can see in my pouring here, the color of it is coming off quite a bit lighter than a lot of other beers. I'm usually pretty careful here on pouring the head. What I'm seeing here is a lot more head generally.
Yeah.
And it's staying around quite a bit here. This is probably with an increased protein content, not from the malts, but actually from the additional hops in it. Impressive. I like that in a beer. It usually...
This one's nice and clear. I mean, you can see it right there through the camera where my thumb is. So it's a very clear beer as well.
Yep. Now, clarity is an interesting thing. So I can tell you from a brewer standpoint, especially from a homebrew level, creating clarity, there's a lot of things that we will do to create clarity without having to filter. So we're not trying to strip away any of the flavor, but we want to settle out less desirable looking character to it.
It almost floats.
So achieving clarity is a really important thing. I think most commercial breweries probably just run it through a small micron filter and end up with a really clear product. But you can achieve this through homebrew methods without filtering, just with settling and using different additives.
Cheers. Now, one thing I will say, even just as I took that drink, I could definitely smell the hoppiness to it.
Yeah, right off the bat.
It's right there. Bam.
Yeah, a lot of almost tastes like a little grapefruity. Definitely has a grapefruity smell.
Yeah, there's a little bit of citrusy tartness to it too.
I know the beer is an ale. They will have fruity esters that come off of it. Most of the time, that hop smell is going to just overwhelm anything that's going to come out of it. So that's going to usually be what you're smelling. So it does actually put off a little bit of fruity ester. It's good. Has a very clean, it's definitely not a heavy beer.
It's dry.
It does have that dry finish. IPAs, they can be really overly hoppy to me. This one is not over the top.
Yeah, that's what I like about it.
So it definitely has, a strong hop presence. It's got some great aroma to it. I think we're creating a little bit of lacing off of it, which I really like as well. I really like the head that's coming off of it. The body to it, I think, is great for the style. From a stylistic standpoint, this is a fantastic beer. I mean, it's certainly hitting everything that you would expect out of this kind of style of beer. I don't know if they've won awards for it. I'm sure that they probably could. But I'm sure that entering into a competition with an IPA that they're up against, stiff competition, because there's just tons and tons of people who brew this style. So you have a lot of competition. But from the aspect of purely like, is it hitting the style of beer? 100%. Like it's clean, it's finishing dry, it's got a great hop aroma, it's got some great crispness to it. You taste that bitterness, like that bitterness really hits you, but it's not like so bitter that it's hard to drink. You can still drink it.
Yeah, I've sucked these down all night before. Even halfway through, because of the lacing on the glass, the head is still retaining. I mean, it's still an attractive looking glass of beer, and we're halfway down, where some other beers, they lose the head, or they don't hold on to the glass, or they don't do any of those things that like make you look at a beer and kind of think, I want that. It doesn't make you mouth water, but it's still, in my opinion, halfway down. And even all the way down, it's going to be a good looking beer. In fact, I've sat here out of boredom doing like this at times, trying to get rid of it, and failed miserably.
Not one of my preferred styles, though I'm certainly not disappointed. If I was at a bar and someone had a pitcher of this and offered me a glass, I wouldn't hesitate.
Oh, it is my preferred style when it's done well. I don't turn down. I'll go to bars because I think they have this. At least that's the way I look at it.
Well, and that's the power of the brand and the power of the style. So they brew it very well. And like you said, it has some great hop aroma to it. And I think we may not kind of realize that impact that the smell has. I'm sure that everyone else out there, when you guys are drinking, you're probably not dumping your nose in there and really trying to bring in that kind of smell into it.
You're busy talking about the game, or
absolutely,
whatever you're at the bar talking with your friends about, or your date about. the smell really does change the way, like before you taste it, you smell it. That's going to impact things.
Hits a lot of really important parts of the
And this is
style.
this is one of those beers that I do like to just kind of savagely dump off in the glass, because I don't care as much for all that CO2, but it's still there. I mean, the bubbles are still rising. I don't know if it shows on the camera or not. No, not so much. But even after I dumped it that way, it's still got plenty of carbonation to it.
Let's see if we kick on a little bit more light.
There you go. There you
Yeah, a
go.
little more light. You can kind of see that there. Great, moderately to high on the carbonation level, which is interesting because mine is really kind of maintaining quite a bit of little head there. So because it does have kind of a strong
Yeah,
protein
and
characteristic.
it's one of the reasons I actually prefer this in the can, because it's not quite as carbonated as the bottles. And I actually prefer it draft, because by the time it gets poured into the pitcher and then decanted into the cup, it's let go of a lot of that fizziness that just for some reason I don't enjoy.
If you want an IPA, this is a great IPA. I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to IPAs to be able to offer IPA advice. But if I'm looking for an IPA, I'm not going to be disappointed with this. I can understand why it's one of your favorite beers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it. Paul, what's your thoughts?
My thoughts are I definitely recommend it. It's one of my favorite beers. I've been drinking this, like once I discovered it and tried it, I've been going back to the well for more of this beer for years. They also make a double IPA. I find it's not quite as hoppy as the regular IPA. And the double IPA also hits a lot of the flavor notes, just a little bit more subdued.
Now, we want to know what your opinion is on this beer. Hop Knot IPA by Four Peaks. Four Peaks is a Arizona brewing company, so we like to feature them if we can. Have one of these. Let me know what your comments, what your perception of this beer is, good, bad, and different, what your perspective is on it. We'd love to hear it. We also want to hear what are the other kind of beers that you want to have us review. We would definitely love to hear your suggestions. I also want to hear from the brewers out there. One of the things that we've talked about going out and doing is shooting some of these live spots at someone's brewery. We would love to come down to your brewery. Obviously, we can't come to everyone, but we'd love to reach out, start maybe making some plans on coming out and doing some live spots at some different breweries. We would love to get an opportunity to do maybe some brewing on doing some live spots there as well.
We would love to come be part of the brewing and do some filming of that.
Absolutely. We love to hear from you, so please reach out, like, comment, share it, please. Subscribe. So we love to continue to provide at least, one or two of these a week so that you guys have an opportunity to enjoy it as well.
And with that, cheers.
Cheers.